The training is done. The preparation races are now completed, but now things get very serious because Saturday marks the 114th edition of La Classicissima, or La Primavera.
Or, as it's better known, Milan-San Remo, the first official monument of the year and the longest at a whopping 302 kilometres. If you include the neutralised zone.
It's always good to add it on to pop it over the 300k mark, isn't it? Now, it's Sai's favourite race of the year, and you'll probably find out a little bit about why, along with all the information about the changes to this year's route and all the key riders taking part. But first up, a reminder of what happened in recent editions.
Oh, no, not all of them, though. Not all of them. So UAE Emirates are really putting on the hurt now. They want this quick. From a sprint of 3 top riders. Here we go. Here we go. It's Juno Alaphilippe with liftoff. Oh, and another one. Another question big answered.
Attack for Tadej Pogacar. He's not interested.
And here he goes.
For a sprint.
Here he goes. Tadej Pogacar liftoff. Oh, Jasper Stuyven is going to go. Jasper Stuyven is going to go. Remember, he's won semi-classics before.
Yeah, Mohoric is going to try. For certain, Mohoric is going to try. And we know Mohoric, he is an absolute daredevil because he put himself off the road.
Leans into the corner and almost rests on the wall. He's giving everything. And Stuyven is trying to get ready for the final sprint. Sits on the wheel of Søren Kragh de Dane. This could be his big day. Every single centimetre of the road being exploited now by Tadej Mohoric. Stuyven's going to the line. Jasper Stuyven's going to the line. Jasper Stuyven wins Milano-San Remo. 150 metres to go. He might as well look to the line now because Bahrain victorious are going to win this race. Tadej Mohoric has his day. What a win.
To this day, the only road race where I've seen a rider use a dropper post. Matej Mohoric using it to good effect 12 months ago and subsequently saying that he destroyed cycling.
He did, yeah. Thankfully, though, he hadn't destroyed cycling.
No,
so we do have another edition of San Remo this year, which will, of course, be live on GCN Plus in all GCN Plus territories.
All of them?
Yeah.
Now, we will have the breakaway for you bright and early from 8:45 GMT to build up to the start of the race proper at around 9:15.
And then in a short matter of around about 6 hours, we'll see them hit the Cipressa and then the Poggio, and finally the finish line on the Via Roma. So if you are not already a GCN Plus subscriber, now would be a very good time to become one. Don't forget, we've also got the Giro d'Italia coming up for you in May, which is also available in all territories, and there is plenty more top-level racing to come before that.
Right, Dan, on to the route, okay? And as Dan mentioned, there has been a change, not thankfully, to the grand finale, but actually to the first few kilometres.
Yes, that is correct. It no longer starts in Milan, but rather in Abbiategrasso. But don't worry, the race is unlikely to be renamed to Abbiategrasso San Remo. And the change apparently is down to a lack of police availability this coming Saturday. I think there's some sort of marathon going on in Milan on Sunday. But it means that the riders won't have to traverse the city centre tram lines in the neutralised zone, which have taken out a couple of riders in recent years before they even got to kilometre 0 to start the race.
That's savage, isn't it? Now, the new start, which is located around 25k southwest of the city centre, means that the first 30 kilometres of the route is different to usual, but then they will rejoin the traditional route as they head southwards towards the coast.
Before they get to that coast, they will have to get over the biggest difficulty of the day, which is the Ticino Pass. At the top of that, they'll be at the highest point of the race, 532 metres above sea level. However, it's not steep, and it's the type of climb where you get a lot of benefit from drafting. Last year's winner, incidentally, Matej Mohoric, averaged 36 kilometres an hour up that main part of the Ticino Pass, and only 292 watts average for that at a weight of 71 kilograms.
I have a feeling that even we would survive that, Dan. Or at least... Well,
you would, yes.
Yeah,
I would definitely be struggling. But you are right, of all the monuments, Milano-San Remo is the easiest race to finish. Good amateurs could comfortably get themselves to the foot of the Cipressa, I would say, and probably to the end of the race inside the time limit. However, they would struggle to hold the wheel somewhat when it came to the last half an hour of racing or so.
Which is where things get properly serious. So the three Capi, or little hills, along the coast serve as antipasti to what's to come. The Capo Mele, the Capo Serve and the Capo Berta all come in the space of just 13 kilometres. And whilst the climbs themselves aren't particularly difficult, the sheer speed the riders go up them, having already ridden 242 or so kilometres, is what totally saps the legs.
Just to save you from the comments, I think it's Capo Cerve. Something along those lines, not France.
I'm so sorry.
Si's French accent is amazing. Italian, less so. Anyway, 11 Ks after the Capo Berta, the riders hit the Cipressa at warp speed. It's 5.6 kilometres with a 4.1% average gradient. And again, it's not the length or the gradient that makes it hard, it's the speed they race up it. Now, for some reason, the climb of the Cipressa has been marked as hazardous on Strava.
Really?
So I can't see the best times from last year, but on climbing-records.com, it says they scaled it in 9 minutes and 30 seconds, which is an average speed of 36 kilometres per hour.
Wow. And that, technically then, is the second fastest time in history, isn't it? 11 seconds short of the record that was set back in 1996. The descent, which I would also imagine has been marked as hazardous on Strava.
I think it has, probably,
yes. It's almost as important as the climb itself. There are often splits there, and even though they come back more often than not, it's an extra effort that you've got to make ahead of the Poggio.
It is, yes. Now, that Poggio comes after 285 kilometres of racing. That one, 3.7 Ks at 3.7% average gradient.
What a brute.
We saw Pogacar attack there last year, didn't we? About 4 or 5 times. But even he wasn't able to create a gap over the other riders. Whilst tough, it is another climb where you can get a massive benefit from drafting, which is really why the race hangs in the balance as to whether or not it could be a sprinter who wins, or a classics rider, or even a pure climber or Grand Tour specialist.
Which is why it's the best race of the year. Everyone has a chance. And not only that, is that it all hangs in the balance, doesn't it? All hangs in the last 15 minutes.
Well, it's the perfect race for you, having less time than me to watch bike racing, isn't it? Because so much action comes in such a short period of time at the end.
Well, it does. And it always hangs in the balance. Whereas sometimes you get a Paris-Roubaix and you know 20, 30 minutes before the finish who's going to win, and Tour of Flanders, whereas Milan-San Remo, you never, ever know.
It is amazing.
Until the last 2 minutes. Yeah, love it. Anyway, now, we do have the data from Matej Mohoric, don't we, from last year from the Poggio. And when you look back at the footage and you focus in on him, you can see just how intelligently he rode that climb. Always in the wheels, never too close to the front, but also never that far away from it. So he averaged 434 watts, which is, I think, 6.1 watts per kilo?
Yeah, when I looked at Strava, that's what it worked out as,
Yeah, for just under 6 minutes, isn't it?
Which is not huge.
It's not huge,
in terms of numbers. But what's really interesting is that his average heart rate up the Poggio last year was 179 beats per minute. Then his average heart rate down the other side was 1 beat per minute less, 178.
Yeah, I'm not surprised, to be honest, given how many risks he was taking.
Also, his average power on that descent of the Poggio, not including the flat run into the finish, was actually higher than his average power was for the main climb of the day, at least the biggest climb of the day, the Ticino Pass.
No way. Yeah. He was a man with a plan.
He was.
Wasn't he?
Yeah.
And it paid off, clearly. Now, one more thing that we found interesting from his data was that over the last 27 kilometres of the race, which obviously includes the Cipressa and the Poggio climbs, he averaged 46k an hour, which is over 28 miles an hour.
That's fast, isn't it, over those two climbs? I don't think even you would stick with that pace.
Even I. No. I mean, it'd be touch and go, wouldn't it? I think I'd last probably about 100 metres up the Cipressa and then
give up.
Poof.
You'd probably head straight down the coast road, wouldn't you?
Not
do the Poggio whatsoever.
Well, yeah, and then you could probably get to the finish and still watch the race, couldn't you?
Yeah. Well, there are riders, actually, who have done that in the past, some of whom have been given an official result at the end of their race, despite not doing the Poggio.
Yeah. Probably Connor did that. No, I joke. Right, back to the course. There are just 2 kilometres between the foot of the Poggio descent and the finish line. two of the most agonising kilometres in cycling. There are rarely teammates together at this point, are there, to have any sort of control. And so if there is someone away, like Mohoric last year, they have a decent chance of not being caught because of a lack of cohesion behind.
Yeah, it happens so often, doesn't it? And even if a group comes to the foot of that descent together, you can often see a rider attack on that final flat road to the Via Roma and stay clear for the very same reason. Although I say often, I'm thinking about it now, and I think the last time that happened was Fabian Cancellara in 2008.
Didn't Stuyven go there?
He went just towards the... Yeah, I guess you could class it as that. He's not quite at the end of the descent, was he? Or at least he took more speed at the end of the descent.
Yeah, it was that little bit, wasn't it? Yeah. When was the last sprint?
Well, if you mean of a group of 10 or more riders, it was actually Alaphilippe back in 2019. But the last true sprints, I think, were 2014, 15 and 16, Christophe, Degenkolb and Demar. Actually, this graph of Killian Kelly's is quite interesting. It shows the number of riders contesting the win at the line over the last few decades, and it really shows you how few times there have been any kind of bunch sprints, particularly in recent times.
Yeah. Why is that? Something to debate, perhaps. It's been a tough few years for sprinters, though.
Yeah,
for sure.
They'll be hoping to get their chance again soon, won't they?
Yeah.
Right, just before we move on to the riders who will be fighting it out for the win this year, a very quick plug for the World of Cycling, which this week will be all about whether Milano-San Remo is the best race on the cycling calendar.
Which it clearly is.
Well, make sure you watch the episode to find out our conclusion and that of the guests. I've also got some t-shirts available to buy that are dedicated to La Primavera, which Sire still doesn't have. So head over to shop.globalcyclingnetwork.com if you'd like to get your hands on one, or any of the other Classics Collection t-shirts that we've got.
No, as Dan said, I still haven't got my hands on any of them. And I pretty much think you've not taken that off yet, have you, since you got given it?
No, it does stink in the studio. Don't have smell-o-vision, fortunately, just yet. But yeah, Sire's bearing with me.
I wasn't mentioning that. It was more just the fact that every time I see you now, you're in one of your new swanky t-shirts. Right, anyway, the favourites, okay? Let's start with last year's winner, Mohoric.
Yeah, no wins so far in 2023, but he is a rider who very much focuses on his big goals for the season, doesn't he? However, he said that big goal for this year, at least in the spring, is Paris-Roubaix, so he might not be quite on his top form this coming Saturday. Interestingly, he chose not to race either Paris-Nice or Tirreno Adriatico on the run-up, presumably to head to an altitude training camp instead.
Now, do you think he's going to have a dropper post?
I don't see why not.
It'd be really interesting. Will anyone else have dropper posts?
Yeah, we'll wait
There we
and
go. Connor actually went to the Poggio. There'll be a video up on GCN before the race comes out, actually, where he tested it out. Drop a post on the Poggio, so make sure you check that video out. And incidentally, by the way, if you speak Italian, GCN Italia did an interview with him recently that you can watch on their channel as well. I think it'll be much more difficult for him this year, won't it?
You'd have thought so, yeah.
Because the others are going to expect him to do something, and they're not going to be surprised if he comes past sat.
No, he
on
won't
his
have the
top tube.
surprise element at all this year, will he?
Well, they'll mark him out from the neutral zone. Look, Mohoric has got his dropper post on today.
Maybe he'll be just very overt about it this year, just riding like this with his knees around his head around the neutral zone. Anyway, maybe he'll try a surprise in the flat running towards the line rather than on the actual descent this year.
Maybe he will, yeah.
See. He's currently third favourite with the bookmakers, just slightly shorter odds than Mathieu van der Poel.
Really? Well, that is interesting. Who are their favourites then?
They've got their top favourite as Wout van Aert. He's around about 5-1, and second favourite is Tadej Pogacar. I noticed actually that Caleb Ewan's odds have drifted over the last few days, probably because he hasn't raced much recently either. He's a man who spent many years focusing on this race and has twice finished second, both times behind a lone attacker. One was Vincenzo Nibali in 2018 and the other Jasper Stuyven in 2021.
Maybe his odds have dropped because even when he does win bike races, he still doesn't get credited with the win.
No.
So there we go.
No, he'll be hoping for a more favourable photo finish if it comes to that, won't he?
To be fair, the problem with Caleb Ewan and Lotto Destiny is actually the fact that Arnaud Delis is in that team as well now. Widely touted as one of the biggest talents in cycling. And a man we've already seen can climb as well as sprint. So how on earth do they accommodate two cooks in one kitchen?
It is a really difficult one, isn't it? If I was the manager, I would be saying to Delis that he has a free roll up to the Poggio, but if Caleb is in the group down the other side, he's got to commit to him.
Yeah? You think Ewan is a better sprinter than Delis?
Well, he's more proven. He's been around longer. And De Lee had some problems, didn't he, with positioning himself in sprints at Paris-Nice. So he might have the same problem in the lead into the climbs. I just think De Lee is going to have his chance, and this is his first time of doing it. So we'll have to wait and see.
Still in his apprentice role?
I'd say so. Yeah, I mean, Ewan's done a lot for them over the years, and he is still only 28. But I think De Lee is definitely seen as their future, isn't he?
Yeah, I guess you could say, can you, that Ewan will be exceedingly disgruntled if he doesn't get the backing of De Lee, wouldn't he?
You would have thought so, yeah. He's been fighting
so
for this race and aiming for it for so many years, isn't
yeah. He? Yeah. Anyway, for context, actually, the last rider to win Milan-San Remo on their debut was Mark Cavendish in 2009. One of the greatest sprints of all time.
Yeah, it was, isn't it?
I think. So it has been done. It just doesn't happen very often. Another team with a couple of cards to play is Alpecin de Koning. So Mathieu van der Poel, their standout rider, of course. This will be his fourth participation at the race, and his best result so far is third last year.
I can't help but think that Van der Poel is not in a dissimilar situation to Peter Sagan in his pomp. Nobody wants to take him to the line, do they?
No. Now, that said, if Van Aert is up there, then at least there could be an alliance between them, because they're both so similar, aren't they, in a race like this? They sort of need to be friends before they become enemies. Yeah, really.
That is very true, actually, isn't it? Now, in terms of their respective teams, well, Van der Poel does have a fast sprinter in his ranks, in Jasper Philipsen. Van der Poel gave him the lead out from heaven on stages 3 and 7 of Tirreno last week, so if he can get himself over the Poggio anywhere near the front, that is a second card to play for Alpecin de Koning.
Yeah, he has not managed it, though, in the 2 times he's done it before, has he? But you'd imagine he would have a free role within the team. They've also got Søren Kragh Andersen now, let's not forget. He attacked near the top of the Poggio last year and looked on great form in the final stage of Paris-Nice. So Alpecin have got a very good team for this race, haven't they?
They have. And it's very easy to forget that Kragh Andersen's gone over to Alpecin, isn't it?
Yeah.
Jumbo-Visma also, as you would expect, have a very strong team who are far from solely reliant on Wout van Aert. He'll be the rider that most of us and most of the other riders are watching, given what he's done and the fact that he's a former winner here. But they've also got Christophe Laporte, who could potentially win himself, and then Jan Tratnik, who can do pretty much everything. He'll probably be doing the domestique work, though.
Yeah, and not to mention Benoot and Van Hooijdonk, if they race, because their full roster is still to be confirmed
as we
whilst we
record
film
this.
this. And then Jasper Stuyven, another former winner on the start line, and he's chosen to pretty much only train at altitude ahead of the Classics this year.
He has, yeah. In fact, I bumped into him at Nice Airport on his way to Tenerife in January. He was there busy trying to remove as much as he could from his bike box, which weighed so much.
Really?
Yeah, before they would allow it to go on the plane. Anyway, after that cab that he went on in January, he then went to Belgium and competed at Omloop, Kuurne and Les Samin, and then went straight back to altitude, choosing not to race Tirreno or Paris-Nice.
It's a tough gig, isn't it, that? My word. It will be interesting to see whether it pays off for him over the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, I remember Team Sky did it years ago with their classic squad, and it didn't work for them at the time, but yeah, things have developed since then, haven't they?
Yeah, they have, yeah. He certainly isn't going to be at the forefront of people's minds, though, is he, having raced so little? And Trek Segafredo also have Mads Pedersen as well, don't they?
Yeah.
6th last year in his first time of
He
trying.
kind of used to avoid Milan-San Remo and Mads Pedersen, didn't he?
Yeah, well, he did. Weirdly, actually, I guess.
Yeah,
but
I know.
Still, there you go. 2019 winner Julian Alaphilippe is also racing, although both he and his team have been struggling a bit in the big one-day races this year. He's shown decent form this year, but not quite the sparkle of previous years.
Not yet, at least. Let's find out on Saturday. Let's move on to the Ineos Grenadiers now. And who would not want to see a descending masterclass from Tom Pidcock on the descent of the Poggio?
Yeah, he did try that a couple of years ago, didn't he? Without success, we should say, on that occasion. And he's definitely in with a shout if he recovers from those Tirreno crashes. Particularly as he's got the experience of Michał Kwiatkowski alongside him, who won here in 2018 and is almost always in the mix. But with Pidcock and that descent, I actually feel quite nervous about the prospect. Because he's obviously
pushed the limits, didn't he?
That's it, he's really good, but there's a fine line between being really good and being on the deck, or off the edge.
Makes me cringe just thinking about it.
It does, yeah. I you know.
What do you reckon for Filippo Ganna? Could he pull off a sort of 2008 Cancellara-style win?
Wow. I mean, see, this is why Milan-San Remo is so good. There's just so many possibilities and permutations about how this could be won, and it all comes down to that final 30 minutes. But as to your question, yeah, why not? I mean, he's climbing pretty well at Tirreno, wasn't he? And he's certainly got the power to do something similar.
The Italians would love that, wouldn't they?
Oh, it would be super cool, wouldn't it?
Yeah, it would be great to watch. Magnus Sheffield, you would have thought at some point in his career might be able to do something similar. He looked a little off colour to me at Tirreno, but he did have to do a lot of work for his teammates there. But then what about Tadej Pogačar then? The man who can seemingly do everything, the man who was being massively talked up this time last year. Do you reckon he can do it?
I don't think so. If I'm totally honest. He couldn't get away from the rest last year, could he? And I don't see it being any different this year.
Really? Words that you could live to regret.
Well, maybe, yeah, but...
well, nobody in the race has won more monuments than Pogačar. In fact, nobody in the current pro peloton has won more monuments than Tadej Pogačar.
Wow. That is bonkers, isn't it? But he hasn't won this one, though.
But he's only done it once. That was his first time trying last year.
Okay. I'm not saying he won't win it. I wonder whether it'll be wind dependent. If there's a favourable wind
later on.
Okay, all right. I won't jump the gun then.
Yeah. Anyway, looking at their team roster, it would seem that UAE, as they often are all built around Tadej Pogačar. Although, if Juan Sebastian Milano's there, he could be a good backup if he's riding, gets over the climbs. But I do agree with you. It's a difficult one for Pogačar to win, isn't it? But it's almost guaranteed that he's going to be up there and at least trying to go on the attack. Moving on though, Biniam Girmay, he's got to be in with a shout. You would have thought, hasn't he?
He can climb and he can certainly sprint, can't he? I'll never forget that thumbs up from Van der Poel last year at the Giro.
Yeah,
you know, he was 12th last year, wasn't he, on his debut, Milan San Remo. And I dare say that actually, being 1 year stronger and even more race savvy, could end up.
I think he's got a chance. Yeah, he's also in a team whose morale is sky high at the moment. Intermarché Circus Wanty, as they're now known. He didn't take a win at Tirreno last week, but then again, neither did Van der Poel or Van Aert. What I do know is that the fans are going to go absolutely berserk if Biniam Girmay wins on Saturday.
Yeah.
Next up, Peter Sagan.
Is he still there, is he?
He is still racing. He's not at his very best. He's been in the top 10 of this race on 9 occasions from 12 starts, but he's never won this one. It's the one that got away. And it does seem quite unlikely that it's going to happen at this point, given his relative lack of recent form, isn't it?
Yeah, it is a shame, isn't it? I mean, I think last year we said it could be a great chance for him to finally win it when people are least expecting it. But like you say, he's a bit of a shadow of his former self, isn't he?
Yeah, it's quite hard to watch in some respects, isn't it?
Fernando Gaviria?
Yeah, he's an interesting one because he came really, really close in his debut at this race quite a few years ago now, but then he got taken out by a crash almost within sight of the line. He has been looking a lot better this year. Maybe he's curbed some of that partying over the winter time.
Yeah, he's a bit of a party animal.
Apparently so. Yes,
well, there you go. Right, let's chat sprinters. I know it's been a while since we had a group sprint, as you said, 2016, the last one. But you never know in this race, do you?
You never know, no. Well, we've mentioned quite a few already, very quick men. But we've also got Malia, if he does it for Soudal Quickstep. Former winner Arnaud Démare for Groupama. He was climbing well at Paris-Nice, wasn't he? He'll be there or thereabouts, you'd have thought. We've got Bennett for Bora, Nizzolo and Strong for Israel Premier Tech. Christophe, another former winner for Uno X. Cavendish, another former winner for Astana. Coquard for Cofidis. Buani and Mozzati for Arkea, even though the latter has never actually won a race. And then Milan and or Phil Bauhaus for Bahrain. Also Teunissen, teammate of Girmay, might surprise. And then you've got Viviani, if he races, for Ineos Grenadiers.
Do you think Jumbo will bring Olaf Koy?
As their backup sprinter, just in case Van Aert and Laporte get dropped.
Well, you know, if you've got him.
Yeah, that would be interesting to see. He's certainly talented, isn't he? And I'm sure he'd like to start getting experience at Milan San Remo. Actually, another sprinter that we haven't mentioned just yet is Magnus Cort of EF Education Easy Post.
Yes, we haven't mentioned EF, have we? They have been on fire this year.
Yeah.
Cort in particular, but he never quite performs as well on one day as, does he?
No.
As well as certainly compared to the results in stage races. Maybe he'll change that on Saturday. I think they're quite hopeful that he'll be up there. So, anyway, we haven't mentioned AG2R either, have we?
We haven't, no. They've got Naesen, Van Avermaet and Kuznefar, but again, don't see any of them winning on Saturday, even if it's quite likely that one of them will make it into the front group. Naesen, though, did look really good on the final stage of Paris-Nice, as he has done in the past. And let's not forget, he was runner-up at this race in 2019, I think it was.
Okay, before we make our predictions, Can we talk about the weather now? Quick updates on the long-term weather forecast. Currently, it's saying dry, 15 degrees, and with a tailwind along the coast of San Remo. If that remains the case come Saturday, it will make it harder for the sprinters, won't it?
It'll make it exciting, that's for sure, won't it? Although I did notice they have predicted some rain for Sunday, so if that comes sooner than predicted, that will change the dynamic of the race too.
Oh, the Poggio in the wet. You want to drop a post for that? Right, time now to make our predictions. Probably the hardest race of the year to make predictions for, because that's why it's so great. There are so many potential winners. Dan?
I looked back at Strade Bianche and you had Tom Pidcock.
I know, I did. I was hoping you'd bring that up.
At least it didn't start though. So, yeah,
no, so that wasn't a great prediction on the women's side, but yeah, I'll take Pidcock.
Well, I went for Van der Poel. And like you sticking with Pidcock from Omloop to Strade, I am going to stick with Van der Poel from Strade to Milan-San Remo.
Okay.
I just think he's been playing it deliberately a bit more quiet at the start of this year with the hope it'll give him more energy for the big monuments to come.
That's what I hope he's doing. But he's not ever really been very good at playing it cool,
holding back,
has he? No, exactly. I mean, old age, I guess.
Yeah, he's in his late 20s now.
Yeah, he's an experienced lad now. I'm going to go for Van Aert. But I just, although there's always that dynamic, isn't it, at the bottom of the Poggio where they look to the strongmen, as we alluded to before. And so I think Van Aert is probably that guy that will always get a little bit screwed over like Sagan was before him. But I wouldn't bet against him. So there we go. I'm going for Van Aert.
Two of the favourites then.
Two
surprise winners the last couple of years to a degree. We haven't mentioned Roglic. He did race last year, but from what I can see, he's not down to race it this year. He'll be next seen at the Vuelta a Catalunya, which starts on Monday, incidentally. But that could change things as well.
I've heard he's shaving his legs, so it'll take him a while.
That was a big news topic last week, wasn't it, at Tirreno? Right then, as ever, we would love to hear who your predictions are for the win this coming Saturday. You can leave them in the comment section down below. But that's all for our Milano-San Remo preview in 2023. Hope you've enjoyed it. If you have, give it a thumbs up, and we'll see you on Saturday.